At least 2,400 people have died because they were given contaminated blood in transfusions during the 1970s and 80s. And an inquiry began yesterday into why it happened and whether there was a cover-up. Mark Ward from Peacehaven is part of the Tainted Blood Pressure Group, and he can join us now from outside Parliament where he's attending the inquiry today. Mark, good morning.
Good morning.
So what takes you to Westminster today?
The shock, the horror, the fear, and all of the infections, the deaths. And I'm caught up in it because as a severe haemophiliac, I was also one of the infected.
Have you any idea when you were infected?
Oh, yeah. Well, because of the nature of the haemophilia, the one thing I'd like to make clear to your listeners is that when we talk about blood, haemophiliacs actually have blood products. So what they would do is they would take up to 60,000 pints of blood, put it all into a huge vat and mix it up. So if one of those pints of blood had infections in, every single batch of the products made from it is infected and tainted. So it's not one blood transfusion like, say, if somebody had a car crash, for instance, and you need surgery and they give you a pint of blood. We were having the donations from thousands injected into us almost every other day. So you've got this constant reinfection.
And why wasn't every pint of blood that goes into that soup, if you like, checked and tested?
Money. Because if you're paying, and this is the problem, here in the UK, we do have better screening processes of donors, not necessarily the blood products at that time, or the blood, but in America and other countries, they paid people. So, for instance, in Arkansas, in the prison, they actually built a plant next to the prison so that they could bleed their prisoners, and bright yellow. They knew they had all these infections and things, but they paid them a couple of dollars, and they got privileges in the prison, and they were just taking their blood and making these products and shipping them all over the world.
So it's quite clear in your mind that this infected blood from America was imported into this country and given to people like you, the products of it. And so why is it now 2018 and this was happening, give or take a few years, 40 years ago? Why we have an inquiry now, Mark?
I think it has to be the same answer, really, Danny. It's money again, because these giant pharmaceutical companies who were exporting this death around the world were making so much money. I mean, like I just said to you, they were taking blood from prisoners here in the UK as well. It wasn't just America, but a bulk of the factor VIII came from America because, as Nicholas said in his report there, that we didn't obtain self-sufficiency. Other countries like Holland, as soon as they heard there was something coming out of the west coast of America, they went self-sufficient, and Britain didn't. So these products were being bought in, and basically because the government knew about it, and instead of protecting haemophiliacs and other people in Britain, they didn't. They used the opportunity to learn and research, and basically the haemophiliacs became collateral damage.
Guinea pigs, essentially, by the sound of it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, so, in my medical notes, it's littered with research where I was being tested for various different viruses, contaminants and pathogens that at any time could have killed me, and all without my knowledge. I mean, I started having treatment aged 3 years old, and I'd already been multiply infected by the time I was 10.
And how has life been for you, Mark? Does that have an impact on your day-to-day life?
Well, yes, because the haemophilia itself is a degenerative condition. All my joints are deteriorating, so it gets worse. But then, of course, you've got all of these different viruses fighting each other. You have the medications, the highly toxic chemicals that do literally keep me alive. But not only that, I mean, Danny, we all remember those horrific adverts, again, as Nicholas mentioned, in the 80s.
Yes.
The stigma from that, the education that has been put out to the world. Bearing in mind, during the AIDS crisis at the beginning, I was a little boy, and we all believed we'd been given this gay plague, and we had no information, and that stigma, right up to 2018, this year, I was at Brighton Pride and talking to one of the big campaigners in Brighton about HIV stigma. People are not being educated about the advances. They still believe that you can catch AIDS by kissing or using somebody else's towel or a cup.
Yeah.
And 30 years on, nothing really has changed with education because they don't want the story to change because they can control people with fear.
What would be a good outcome from this inquiry, Mark? What do you want to see happen?
I know justice comes in many different forms. Obviously, we want justice to be seen to be done, but I want accountability. Those who made these decisions, I want to know why they made the decisions, of course. I mean, if somebody says to you, don't do this because it's dangerous to your life, you don't go ahead and do it. And they ignored that. It was there was a former health minister who said, as it's only haemophilia X, dying of AIDS, nobody else has to worry. These people need to be brought to task, but we have to learn from what happened. We have to ensure that it never happens again. And my view is no amount of money can uninfect me. It can't give me back the life stolen. It can't take away the hurt from the stigma. But what it can do is it can give me closure, and it can help my family and my friends possibly move on with however long we got left alive. But the one thing I will continue to fight for is the protection of those that haven't even been born yet.
Right. Just a final point. As we've seen with the recent Hillsborough inquiry, do you have faith that the inquiry can reach a good conclusion, if you like, a definite conclusion?
I believe that Sir Brian Langstaff is a very honourable man. He's a very nice man to talk to. I have faith in him. I believe in him. We've got to have belief, otherwise we wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm. I think that from even just the opening statement he made yesterday, he's requested access to documents which we would never have seen before because it needed a statutory inquiry to ask for these, request these documents. The evidence that I have and others I know through my campaigning, we have such a huge amount of damning evidence. Something has to be done. And yes, I do believe that this time, this is our last chance, but I do believe he will do his best for us.
Thank you, Mark. Let's stay in touch as the inquiry continues. All right, thank you for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best. Mark Ward from Peacehaven with us on BBC Sussex and BBC Surrey.